You look like Redbone.
It's a long story. I had to shave for a respirator test. I'm down in Sydney I'm teaching our medical program. Long story. It's the only time you'll ever see me like this. So.
Okay. Good to see everyone. So we'll kick off right away. Once again, apologies for being late. I just trying to deal with my webcam. Anyway. So welcome everyone. We'll call to order at 1:31. And we'll start off by recognizing that we'll be conducting our business today largely on the territories of the Hupatchisitt and Litshatr First Nations, but also widely the Nuu-chah-nulth peoples and potentially even the Coast Salish as well. And on that, our meeting today is being conducted remotely, generally through Zoom, but we do have the ability to live stream, which we're doing right now. And we're live streaming on YouTube, which you can access through YouTube or on our website at acrd.bc.ca. And if you have any questions that you'd like to ask, you can send your questions, which will be answered at question period at the end of the agenda. And you can send it to responses@acrd.bc.ca, and that would be the way to do it. With that in mind, we do have an agenda in front of us that does have a late item to be added to the agenda, I believe, but that will be for the in-camera portion of the agenda, so I don't think we need to mention it specifically here. Are there any other items to add to the agenda or to move around or any further amendments? If not, we could have a motion to... Thank you very much, Director Roberts. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Beckett. To adopt the agenda as presented. Any further comments? All right, seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, motion carried, great. All right, does anyone have any declarations? So declarations of gifts or conflicts of interest or perceived conflicts of interest at all? Seeing none, I think we can move on to the next agenda item. That's the adoption of minutes for the Board of Directors meeting dated April 14th, 2021. Thank you, Director Bodner, and seconded by Director McNabb. Are there any errors or omissions or other changes to the minutes as presented? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay. That brings us to petitions, delegations, and presentations. Normally, we have a 10-minute maximum for presentations. And if you get close to near the end, and if you can see my tiny image during your presentation, if I hold up a 2 or a 1, that's how many minutes you generally have left. Once we hit the 10-minute mark or thereabouts, I'll interrupt and ask the board if they want to continue. Unless I get the sense that you're really close to finishing off, then we can go over a little bit just for the sake of making sure things go expediently. First up, we have a presentation from Mr. Jason Kivas, a bylaw enforcement officer, and that's being done by in service for 5 years. So, Mr. Erg, if you would please take it away, go ahead.
Hi everyone. I think most of you know Jason, but Jason's now been with the ACRD for 5 years, and during that time, he has been the bylaw enforcement officer. He works really hard to meet the public expectations in a very demanding and often thankless job for the people that he interacts with. Certainly, I'm always appreciative of all the work he does. And I do want to highlight really the success that Jason's had in the time that he's worked with us in working with other agencies, specifically the provincial and federal agencies, particularly the conservation officer, the conservation officers and the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, and really helping to resolve a lot of issues that are not always within our jurisdiction or completely within our jurisdiction, but coming up with solutions. With sometimes all three agents, all three of the Jason and the conservation officer and DFO coming up with a solution to particular problems, and recent examples include some of the illegal camping that we've had, as well as environmental problems related to work done in the foreshore docks being put in the wrong spot. And you know, when he's not working, Jason enjoys spending his time in the outdoors with his family and with his wife, Deanna. And I'm sure he is looking forward to hockey season starting up sometime soon for the adults. And certainly we are all looking forward to working with Jason for the next 5 years. And so congratulations, Jason's on 5 years.
Thanks, Mike. I just want to say thanks to everybody, and thanks for my wonderful jacket here for the ACRD, and hopefully another 10 more years to go. All right.
At least,
Thanks so much.
Bylaw enforcement is so thankless all the time, and someone who can stick it out for 5 years is always appreciated. So thank you for your service on behalf of the board. And Director Roberts, if you'd like to, go ahead.
Yeah, I just, again, congratulations, Jason, on the great work. And I'm just wondering if the jacket that you got is bulletproof.
It's Kevlar lined, yeah.
All right. So once again, thank you so much for everything you've done. It's always particularly hard given the situations that we find ourselves in, especially in the COVID era. So once again, thank you. Okay. Oh, I can hear my daughter. She's arrived home early. Okay, next up we have Mr. Stefan, hopefully, Yancey, the Ops Manager for Transportations and Infrastructure for Central Vancouver Island regarding highway issues. Hopefully I pronounced your name right, but yeah, please take it away.
Yeah, no, thank you, John. Thank you everyone for having me at the meeting. I got a little quick presentation for you. I don't want to bore everybody with a long drawn out PowerPoint presentation, but I do have a few slides for everyone. And it's an update of some of the work that we have going on within the transportation realm through the ACRD area. And it's along its borders as well. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to share my screen with everybody. And let me know if you don't see the screen there. Does everybody have the screen okay? Can they see it?
Yep, nice and clear.
Okay, great. Okay, so as I said, this is a presentation. So we typically have a joint meeting and every year on an annual biannual basis. And this is our opportunity to give everybody an update of some of the work that we have ongoing. Some of our projects, as you know, span multi-years. So we like to be able to keep everybody in the loop as to what's going on and our anticipated completion dates for a lot of these projects. So we can move ahead here. So Cathedral Grove. So I know we have, everybody's probably aware of the Cathedral Grove project that the ministry has been working on with BC Parks as well. And essentially it's a safety project that we've developed to address some of the pedestrian safety issues at Cathedral Grove. And so we've been working on that in the background with the engineering and design portions of the project. And moving it forward to a point where we've done some public engagement. So as some of you may be aware, we've done 2 rounds of public engagement on Cathedral Grove as well. It sort of stalled a little bit when we were transitioning during the election period. So as that election period happens, everything kind of goes on a stall for a little while, but it's back and we're moving forward with it again. So just a couple of bullet points here. Obviously the project is a ministry priority. So Cathedral Grove is a high priority for us on Highway 4. That's one of our big projects along with Kennedy Hill. And so we're to the point now where we went out to the public with designs and got input on what the designs would look like. So we're just in the process of finalizing what design we're going to bring forward. And that will be brought forward in the final round of public engagement, which is projected to begin late spring, early 2021. So in the next couple of months, we hope to get out and do public engagement. It's going to be a little different because it'll likely be a virtual public engagement due to the COVID situation right now. Yeah, we would like to get as much input as we can on that project. So Highway 4 Angel Rock. So some of you may have remember this project from our last update. So we have a list of 12 projects developed through the Highway 4 corridor. Some of them we're working on right now, currently Kennedy Hill, Cathedral Grove. 2 of the projects on here identified were Highway 4 Angel Rock and Highway 4 westbound passing lane. So with respect to Highway 4 Angel Rock, we have a completed detailed design. So we're basically at a stage where we could start to go out to tender. The project has been put on hold. It's not currently a priority for the ministry on that section. Basically due to the fact that when we sort of look at the cost feasibility of it, at the end of the day, for the $20 to $30 million projected cost, we'd still be left with a 2-lane roadway, but just a 1.5 meter paved shoulder. So we believe that we could probably spend that money on a more feasible project on that. So that's the same as the Highway 4 westbound passing lane extension. So we have a detailed design. It's all complete and ready, tender ready. That project is also on hold. It's not a priority currently right now as well. So this is just some of the other projects that we have going on this season. So Highway 4 paving. So we have a couple of locations where we're going to be paving. So one of the big ones that we have is Draw Creek Bridge. So Tokor Bay Road, basically, to Thunderous Creek Bridge. So it's approximately 10 kilometers, and it's a bigger project that consists of repairing the road base in there and repaving that section. So just to sort of narrow it down, that's the section basically just west of Kennedy Hill going towards the junction. That's where we're going to be doing a lot of paving, recognizing there's a few road-based drainage issues out in that area. So that's a good project that we're going to have going on this summer. The next one is the Highway 4 Port Alberni Summit, the S-curves, and everybody I'm sure is aware of these that drives from Port Alberni to Parksville. So there again, we have some road-based issues in that section, and we're going to likely in June, towards the end of June, we're going to be repairing some of those sections in that area. So next we move on to pedestrian crossing and line marking improvements. So these are smaller safety improvements. So we're currently actually working on an upgrade to the pedestrian crossing at Johnson and Ian Ave in Port Alberni. So there's a mid-block crosswalk there, and we're upgrading that to the bigger, larger highway size signs, the black on or white on black signs with the LED lighting in it. So it'll highlight that crosswalk. It's a sort of a darker area there. Pedestrian activated crosswalk at Highway 4 and Chesterman Beach Road. So some of you who live in that area may have noticed that we've got some bases installed there. And we're about mid-May, we're going to come in there and finish that section off, and that'll be a pedestrian activated crosswalk there. Yeah, so that one's a pretty important one. We've done a few crosswalks along that stretch, and that's sort of to compensate for the increased traffic and the development in that Tofino area. The next one we have is repainting of thermoplastic pedestrian crosswalks along Johnson Road and throughout the whole ACRD area. So we've identified a lot of crosswalk crossings and pedestrian crossings in the area that we have that need to be refreshed with thermoplastic paint. So that should be happening throughout the spring and summer season. Highway 4 and Beaver Creek Road. Okay, so we have been working with the city of Port Alberni staff on developing this project. So right now at the point we're at, we've sort of narrowed it down to the Beaver Creek and River Road intersection, and that's been identified as the sort of the high priority on that corridor. So to date, we've completed some preliminary engineering and design options for the intersection. So essentially, it's similar to the way the Cathedral Grove one works. We do the preliminary engineering, and then we come up with some design options that would potentially fit that intersection there. So that is a project that's ongoing, and we'll be completing some more work on that, some more design work on that this year, and sort of narrowing things down and trying to figure out, once we get a design, we can figure out what kind of property we may require to upgrade that intersection. Yeah, that's it for my presentation. I have some time for some questions if anybody would like to ask.
Oh yeah, the 10-minute mark doesn't count questions and comments, so we have plenty of time for that. But thank you for,
okay.
Yeah, you came in under budget there. So I have Director Roberts, Director Cole, and Director Bodner.
Yes, Stefan, thank you. with regards to the Kennedy Hill, has there been any further thought put in to improve communications? I know that they have a satellite phone there in the event of an emergency at the site, but for residents and travelers going through, is there any proposal to do something with regards to Wi-Fi connection? And that one firstly, and secondly, once the paving is completed on the hill, I understand that the turnoff going up off of the highway up towards Tokort Bay is going to be improved and paved as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, thanks, Kel. Yeah, so the ministry made a commitment to pave that first section up to the top of the hill on Tokart Bay Road. That won't be completed as part of this paving this summer, but when we come back to pave Kennedy Hill, that's part of that paving project as well. So that's been tendered with that project. So yeah, the intent is to still get that piece paved there. So, and your second question with respect to the Wi-Fi, yeah, so we have actually looked at it quite extensively. Wi-Fi placing Wi-Fi at the Kennedy Hill. So there's a couple of well, there's a few issues and reasons as to why we haven't moved forward with it. The first one being is that it's the power lines that travel through that section are high voltage power lines. So in order to drop power down to that section for to run like a Wi-Fi modem or something, we would have to install a transformer, and that's you know, just an estimate of a couple of $100,000 to put one in there. So then we sort of looked at the next thing we could do, which would be to run generators to run that there. And I mean, that would require us to run a generator basically 24/7 to power the satellite there. Now, the connection there it would have to be a satellite connection. And so when we looked at it, it basically to have that satellite installation there, it wouldn't produce enough bandwidth to really give any amount of value to the line. You might get 5 or 10 cars in the line. And so then what we're sort of concerned with was that people would be getting out of their vehicles and walking up to the front of the line to get Wi-Fi service. And then when we had to flush traffic, it would be a bit of a challenge to get everybody back to their vehicles there. So there is a high-speed line that runs along there through TELUS, but so far they don't really have any interest in dropping a connection down there. So there again, it would be a cost thing, and the timing would require some kind of design. So yeah, I guess to answer your question, we have looked at it extensively. If there was any way we could do it fairly simply and relatively inexpensively, we would probably move forward with it, but it's not practical right now.
Yeah, thanks for that, Stefan. And now part of the improvement on the Kennedy Hill is there not going to be a viewing area out there as well? That's
correct, there is, yeah.
Well, perhaps at that time, TELUS might be interested in kicking in and putting something together. It would be an ideal location for sure. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Cal.
Thank you for that. I have Directors Cole, Bodner, Cote, and McNabb. So Dr. Cole, you're up next.
Thank you. Hi there. So I too, I concur with everything that Director Roberts said. Also for emergency services purposes, some sort of connectivity between the rest stop by the lake and then coming towards Kennedy Lake without having any connectivity is obviously emergency services concern as well. But my question to you today, is it at all on anybody's radar, the stretch between the end of the trail coming, the bike trail coming from Tofino, where it pops out onto the highway and there's no current, there's a section there where there's not currently a path, and then leading past the junction to connect with the Ucluelet part. So we're still working on being able to connect that section, but in the short term, where people pop out Ucluelet bound on their bikes, they're popping out onto the highway at the same spot where the passing zone starts as soon as you turn right at the junction. So if you're a cyclist and you've come to the end of the trail and you pop out on the highway to keep heading towards Ucluelet, you now have not only don't have your own lane or space on the highway to ride your bike, but you now have oncoming traffic moving towards you in the lane that you're in passing, because here are people who have been frustrated about, you know, the delays and the crappy road leading up to the junction. And now here they have their first straight stretch with the passing lane. And there have been quite a few concerned citizens who have actually experienced this biking hazard. And is there anything, is it on your radar, and is there anything we could do in the short term? I mean, I don't know if it's taking away a passing lane, if that creates more problems in the short term, but we do have what is potentially a serious incident about to happen in this area, especially with the warmer days coming and more people using the trail. And of course, more people visiting the West Coast as soon as they're able to, and the warmer months just bring that.
Yeah, so we don't have anything on our radar for that. I mean, if there's a safety concern, we would certainly be willing to look at some sort of option to address that in the short term. I think, like you mentioned, the ultimate goal is that the ACRD path would connect to the Parks Canada path, because ultimately, for safety's sake, that's the best. Having a separated pathway is probably the safest option. But what I can do is have our traffic engineering folks look at it and see if there's any sort of short-term measurements or, pardon me, short-term options that can be done within that time frame. The challenge there for us to build any kind of a pathway is that we don't actually have any right-of-way there. Ministry of Transportation doesn't. It's all actually Crown land through there. So, and then it connects to Parks Canada. So, yeah, that's a bit of a bit of a challenge there. But certainly, I can bring that forward. We can take a look at it and see if there's something that that can be done there in the short term.
That would be fabulous. Just like I said, a fix before we get the real fix would be,
Yeah,
probably could save somebody's life.
absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. Then next up, we have Director Bodner.
Thank you. Yes, this seems to come up every time I have a chance to talk about transportation. First of all, I want to thank you very much for that presentation. It was great, and it's nice to see that something may be done about Beaver Creek and River Road.
Yes.
I am the director for the Cherry Creek area, which takes in the Coombs Country Candy when you first come into the valley.
Yeah.
And there is a point of interest across the road, not on the same side as the Coombs Country Candy, but on the other side. And it's extremely popular, not just for local people, but for people who travel on Vancouver Island and tourists. There's no place for them to park, and we haven't found an answer yet. So until then, you know, like Cathedral Grove, at least there's no corners involved. You have signs up there saying slow down, and the road is a bit wider. But coming down into Port Alberni, there is nothing there to indicate that people are going to be crossing the highway. They park over at the candy store, which isn't a problem, but they have to cross the road to get to the hole in the wall. So I'm wondering, it would be possible to perhaps have a sign on both sides before the corner saying, watch out for pedestrians. Just something until we find an answer, something there to let them know, because somebody is going to get killed across there. So I just want to pass on my concern.
Yeah, no, I know exactly where you're talking about, Diane, the hole in the wall part there where everybody parks. So we've heard that sort of message a few times now. And yeah, you're right. It is a bit of a challenging solution there in the absence of having some kind of parking for the attraction there. But very similar to the biking one that Rochelle brought up there, we do have signage in our inventory that we could look at placing up there to indicate to folks that, or drivers, that there are people potentially crossing the road there. I mean, ultimately, we would prefer if they would go down to like a marked crossing and walk back up. But I know in that stretch, there's not a marked crossing along there because it is a highway. So sometimes putting a marked crossing on a highway is not always the safest thing to do. So, but I will as well bring that up with our traffic engineering folks, and there likely is some signage that we can put up. Well, I know there is some signage that we can put up there. So
thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that. Next up, I have Directors Cote and then McNabb. And then Roberts.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, Stefan. It's good to see you
Ooh.
I'm just wondering a couple of things. So who is replacing Dale Martin?
Dale Martin is replaced by Tegan Burton. So she comes from our service area 13. So she comes from Vernon, the Vernon area. So yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. And I'm assuming that the S curve is the bottom of the hump.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, just as you get down towards the bottom. Yeah.
In Port Alberni side or going towards Parksville?
Parksville side. So that's as you're headed eastbound, there's 3 big sections there where there's a road base issue and they're sort of slumping.
Yeah.
It's those ones there. Yeah. I'm sure everybody has driven over them and cursed them a few times. So.
Well, yeah, it's a concern. I'm watching it. Seems to get worse every time I go that way. And a couple of other things, just the road deterioration at Sprout Lake. So it's ongoing and I'm sure it's everywhere. So just wondering if there's any paving plans for Sprout Lake this year, since we haven't been able to do our tour for the last year. So.
Yeah, no, it would be nice to get together again and do that. So I'm not 100%. There always is paving ongoing through the ministry's quantified maintenance plan every year. I'm not sure on the specific roads that they're looking at, or if there is specific roads they're looking at. So yeah, I can follow up with you, Penny, and just see if there's roads in the Sprout Lake area that are on the books for paving or chip sealing or repair or whatever they got going on. So
that would be awesome if we could have that for the whole valley or the regional district. If there's going to be specific areas, then all the directors would know and be prepared for any calls or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. We have done a few. We did last fall. We did Sutton Road out in Ucluelet area there. We finished chip sealing that road last year, and yeah, so we sort of pick them off as we have funding to do them. Our maintenance dollars have to get spread through the whole Central Island area, so sometimes it's a challenge to get to all of the roads that we need to get to. But yeah, certainly I will follow up with you on that.
I think you do a great job, but also just want to say thanks. We're working with you, our Sprout Lake Parks, on the trails at Sprout Lake. Trying to get some more. That's part of our OCP, that to get an extra kilometer a year, which is really hard to do, but we have funding right now and really trying to get these trails moving along, so it's for the safety of everyone. And just wondered, I haven't been out to the lookout in quite a while, and I'm wondering if anything more was done besides the concrete barriers that were put in place. Is there any garbage pickup there or anything these days, or?
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because the last time I was out there, I stopped. Usually every time I stop there and take a look out there, and honestly, it's pretty disheartening. So what I will say is we, with those barriers up there and the no dumping signs and the concrete median that we put up, it's minimized the dumping there, I think. So we don't have like the appliances and the big stuff that people unload off the back of their trucks there. But I do see people are throwing just regular household garbage over there, stuff that they can throw over by hand. So yeah, that was a little disheartening to see, because it was actually pretty good for a while. But the last time I stopped there, I saw some garbage there, albeit not the big stuff, but yeah.
It'd be really nice to find a solution for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's at the end of the day, it's difficult because we can put up the signs, but they're people only obey, a certain amount of people only obey the signs, right? So.
Great. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Penny.
Okay. I have Directors McNabb, Roberts, and Minions next. Director McNabb.
So the Beaver Creek and Highway 4 intersection upgrade is something that I've been on about ever since I started on the board. So it's awesome to see that happen. And I know you don't have enough on your plate, so I just give you another one here. The Beaver Creek Road itself, it's almost worth your life to bicycle on that road. There is no shoulder, and I'm looking as a long-term sort of project at providing a walking, biking lane like most other roads have along Beaver Creek. So you might want to just have a cruise down there and see what that's going to take, and maybe we can start the ball rolling on that that particular concept. And it's kind of just like some of the other things. Somebody is going to get hurt, and well, they have already. It's in the history of Beaver Creek Road. There's been many hit and runs and vehicle and bicycle accidents and pedestrian accidents that have simply been caused by the fact that there is no shoulder. So I'll leave that one with you. And like Diane, the hole in the wall parking problem is significant. And my solution, part of the solution I would suggest, is to continue the 60-kilometer right past that corner exiting Port Alberni and entering into Port Alberni the same thing, go down to 60 kilometers before the corner where everybody is crossing and parking.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Okay, so next up we have Directors Roberts and then Minions. Director Roberts, please go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair. Stefan, thank you very much. I appreciate the chip sealing that was done on Sutton Road in Port Albion. The next item on that is we've got to put a sign up to get people to slow down. Apparently, it could be a bit of an issue. I think they're on paved highway, and anyway, it's another issue. Further, with regards to the highway leading in towards Ucluelet, there is a T section there on Lee Street. And Lee Street, there's been one death there where people are pulling up from Lee Street, getting onto the highway. And as you're aware, coming from the junction side, heading up the hill, it's quite a steep grade. I'm just wondering if there's anything we can do there, a caution sign, or I don't know if it's possible to even put a flashing light there, but to get people to slow down coming up that hill, because it can be quite treacherous. Anyway, your thoughts on that, please.
Yeah, no, I know where you're talking about, actually. That's when you go up that or come down that hill anyway, you feel like you're on a bit of a roller coaster going down the hill there. I can't give you a solid answer on that right now. So anything like that with respect to like geometry of the road, we have to go through our traffic engineering folks. But what I can do for you, Kel, is if you could send me an email and just sort of outline the concern, and then what I do is I forward that to our provincial traffic engineering folks, and they take a detailed look at it. And that's when they can come up with options to say, hey, you know, we can put some of this signage here, or we can make this improvement. Because yeah, at the end of the day, I'm not an engineer, but I can certainly facilitate that process for sure. If that's okay with you. Or...
Much appreciated. Thanks. I'll do that, Stefan.
Okay, thank you.
Next up, I have Directors Minions and then Steer, and then Cote and Cole.
Thank you very much. Appreciate everyone's comments and the presentation being made. I just wanted to thank on behalf of the City of Port Alberni for the work that is ongoing around the Beaver Creek and River Road intersection. We've seen a lot of pedestrian concerns there, and it was 2 years ago almost that we came to UBCM and asked for specific work on that intersection, and we just really appreciated how quickly the ministry has acted on those concerns and the commitment to continuing the work. I just wanted to reiterate as well that a part of the request we had made at that UBCM and going forward with the last one and in ongoing conversations we've had since was around additional pedestrian safety improvements on Lower Johnston Road. Really appreciate the improvements being made at Ian. I know that, we did recently just have another pedestrian accident that led to a death in our community. And I know the ministry is very aware of the challenges around crossing some of these intersections. But just wanted to kind of bring that up again with our very wide roads. It is like crossing a highway. And I know it technically is a highway, but it creates a lot of challenge. So we're hoping, even if it's the city partnering, we're happy to talk about partnerships. We're hoping to see some more pedestrian safety improvements on Lower Johnston Road over the next couple of years as well. So thank you.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Sherry, so we, as part of the Beaver Creek and River Road, we did do a bit of preliminary design work, very preliminary, I'll say, with some options for the Lower Johnston corridor there. We didn't really get too far other than just sort of developing some options in working with the city staff as well. But that's definitely, we're aware of that concern, and it's really just sort of, when it comes down to funding, we pick the priority and then we sort of move back from there, right? So yeah, we definitely hear you. It is a priority. We understand the pedestrian concerns, and I'm very hyper aware of the concerns there. So as part of that, we're going to have a lot of those crosswalks repainted this year as well. I know it's not a huge improvement, but it is some safety improvement along that section, I think. So, but we will continue to work on that for sure.
Yeah, and that Ian Avenue at Johnston really is absolutely a priority. So happy to see that one being addressed. And we were very excited. I know not everyone has had a chance to see the study that was done, but our council, City of Port Alberni, was really happy to see the Lower Johnston Road suggestions for making improvements. So we're looking forward to talking more about those. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Next up, I have Director Steer, and then Cole.
Great, thank you. I didn't realize how popular you were, Stefan. This is
did I.
pretty entertaining. I want to thank you once again from the district of Tofino for the incredible work you've been doing with us lately and in the past. The work with our new Director of Infrastructure and Public Works along the safety issues around Maltby and some of the engaging work that you've been doing there. And really want to thank you for the pedestrian activated crosswalk at South Chesterman there. That's my neighborhood, and it was our neighborhood group that started that activation a long time ago. I did have a question regarding one of the conversations that we were having early was the potential for a reduction in the speed from Maltby Road as had already been accomplished at the North Chesterman area. And one of the answers we had come back was that it probably was not going to be happening because of the high rate of that people were obeying the speed limits coming in. And the question that I had was, but was the speed limit appropriate to begin with? And I don't know how those conversations get taken into account and how one goes about maybe lobbying for maybe a relook at that speed zone from Maltby Road into South Chesterman.
Yeah, so actually you're in luck, Tom. I got some good news for you. So yes, you're absolutely right. We have, so the way we look at speed is very engineering, I guess we'll say. So we look at data, right? So, and the way we sort of set speeds is what we call the 85th percentile. So we do a survey in there and we say, well, 85% of the vehicles are traveling at this speed. So we set that speed, plus or minus 10 kilometers of that. That said, we have looked at that section, and one of the driving factors, we have looked at that section, we are reconsidering the speed limit change there. And one of the factors that is influencing that decision is the number of marked or pedestrian crossings from Tofino right out to Maltby Road. So the more sort of upgraded special crossings you have, the more that we sort of have to relook at the speed limit. So I can't give you a solid on that, but I can tell you we certainly are looking very hard at that and hoping to maybe announce some changes in the near future. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, next up I have Directors Cote and then Cole.
Thank you. Me again, sorry. I just forgot to mention about the camper at the corner of Great Central and Highway 4. I see your email this morning says that it has moved, but it was there for a couple weeks and was quite alarming to the community that it was there. Realizing now that also that it was on Ministry of Transportation property. I want to say thank you for participating yesterday with the unauthorized camping meeting, the unofficial meeting that we had. Unfortunately, you missed the questions that were sent your way from our administrator, Doug Holmes, but thank you for being on this and sending me the information this morning that the van has moved. And I'm wondering, are you experiencing a lot of the temporary unauthorized camping on ministry land? Thanks.
Yeah, so yeah, thanks, Penny. So it's funny, it's interesting. I was talking with Douglas yesterday. Yeah, so we do have quite a bit of experience with, let's say, it's a very broad range. So we have the abandoned vehicles, we have the illegal camping and occupation, and we also have things that stretch or more broadly into what we would call, I guess, a homeless camp style thing. So quite a bit of experience. Definitely an increase in the last couple of years with that sort of thing. And so the ministry sort of, we deal with it quite regularly, but usually it's just sort of that situation where it's like somebody's parked in the right of way and they've been there for a while. And, you know, we go through our steps to make sure we communicate with them and find out the situation. And then if we have to take steps, we can remove them. We have statutory authorities to shuffle them along, but it sometimes can take time. If it starts growing into something, usually our position is we start documenting it because it might require a higher level of authority to evict that camp, right? So it really it's very situational dependent, but yeah, we're pretty aware of, usually as soon as somebody's parking on a right of way, we are notified instantly by either the police or residents or however, right? So we get notifications a lot. So yeah, I have about 5 or 6 of them in the Nanaimo area right now as well. So yeah.
That's good to know. Thank you. Lastly, we have Dr. Cole.
Just dawned on me that both of my concerns today are going to be solved when we can connect those two ends of the trail with that section in the middle that we need. But the matter of safety of our community and our source of water is, our aquifers are right at the junction. And you were speaking of signage, and I think this might be on your radar already, but that to find a way that we can keep the tanker trucks and those larger transportation vehicles from parking where it's kind of an accident waiting to happen. If there was a leak or something, our community's water supply is right there.
Yeah, no, I'm aware of that, Rochelle. So I've actually engaged with our roads manager for that area and to go out there and take a look and perhaps contact the District of Ucluelet to meet somebody out there just to see exactly where the concern is. I know where you're talking about. And yeah, we could certainly look at putting some no parking signs there and getting people off that, because yeah, we know there's the well there and everything. So yeah, no, I hear you on that one.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. And Dr. Paulson, please go ahead.
It's Ronnie come lately on this discussion, but thanks, Stefan, for your input today. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but talking about the hole in the wall situation, and we have an opportunity to be proactive here, and just the promotion of that has been kind of subdued over the years, and it's been word of mouth. But I don't know if anybody saw this week that Tourism Vancouver Island released the top 7 waterfalls to visit on Vancouver Island, and Hole in the Wall was rated as number 2. So now that the advertising or the promotion has become more overt, we're probably going to see increased traffic over the period of time. And the pullout where the road goes to the Black Powder Club, probably right now as it sits, is not the answer for parking, because quite often people actually block and park the gate there. And anyway, I just want to make a comment that we do have an opportunity to be proactive rather than reactive in that area. And I'm just happy to hear that it came up a couple of times today. Thanks, Stefan.
Thank you, Ron. Yeah.
Okay, on behalf of the board, I'd like to thank you for not only your presentation, but the depth and breadth of your answers. And that sets us at ease in regards to knowing that if we have questions, we can send them your way outside of that and get some good and prompt responses. I'm really impressed by the amount of detail and context you have across the entirety of our regional district. So just kudos to you on that. That's impressive. And we're very much grateful for that. So yeah, I hope to see you again soon. And thank you for your presentation.
Excellent. Thanks for having me.
Okay. Alrighty, everyone. I think that brings us to item 6. There are no items for correspondence for action. We do have correspondence for information. And if there's anything anyone would like to pull out, I do know that Director Beckett might want to speak to something in regards to the Ferry Authority. So do you want to kick us off there?
Thank you, Chair Jack. I would be interested in seeing if the board would be interested in having Mr. Tremblay do a presentation to us regarding the BC Ferry Authority, the work that Mr. Tremblay is doing. And in particular, I'm interested in the subsidy mechanism that the Lady Rose receives from BC Ferries, and to see if there are any other marine services that BC Ferry Authority supports within the region, and just to have a better understanding of that organization and mechanism. And I don't know, Mr. Chair, if we need a motion to request that presentation, or we just ask staff to arrange that. Thank you, sir.
I think we can just ask staff to arrange that. That sounds like something that would be in context really interesting and important for our decision-making processes. So let's try to get that as soon as possible then, perhaps, Douglas, if you're out there listening. Yeah, okay. Okay, and Director Shannon, you had an item you'd like to pull out?
Yes, thank you. I want to pull out items B, the moratorium on recreational wolf hunting on Vancouver Island. I'd like to speak to it because I'll start off with saying I'm opposed to a moratorium on wolf hunting on the island. And I'm hoping that we can write a letter in opposition to this resolution that Suk is putting forward or supporting going forward to ADICC. And the reasons that I am opposed to this is while I support the studying and getting more information, I don't want to see a moratorium put on this prior to that, or support a moratorium prior to that, because what I gather from the letter is they're working on protecting the sea wolves. The moratorium would cover gray wolves, which is a provincial, which is in the hunting regulations. It's not separated, and maybe that's part of a study where we look at a subspecies of wolf versus like just the gray wolf that's in the province. And especially with the part of the resolution, that states that, just let me find it here, sorry, that there's unrestricted wolf harvesting practices and their impacts on the island's biodiversity, wildlife ecology, and sustainability of the resident of the wolf population. And I don't agree with that, because there is limits on wolf harvest for hunting. If you go in the hunting and trapping regulations, hunters have a maximum bag limit of 3 wolves per year, and there is a season, and they must go through compulsory reporting. And there is restrictions with trapping, not as much as the hunting. So I worry that, like I said, while I support doing more research, checking out wolf populations, I think that needs to be looked at as a whole, with habitat destruction and availability, feeding, like wolf, what they're feeding on versus sea wolves versus timber wolves. If we're looking at food in the ocean versus ungulates such as deer, elk on the island, and keeping in mind that we also have bears and cougars as predators, big game predators on the island. I don't support this in the sense of the moratorium, and wanted to bring this forward for discussion to see what everybody else's thoughts were.
Yeah, it does really seem like this is just coming because of that one trapper hunter woman who.
And
yeah,
to speak to that, I mean, they stated that that person was in their legal right to be harvesting that wolf. And I fear that that has sparked a real emotional response. And I don't want to see a blanket restriction that could affect a lot of people who like culturally, recreationally hunt wolves because of that. So I want to see more steps in place before we see anything changed. And I don't think a blanket moratorium is the answer at all right now.
Okay. Director Steer?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, we just had this discussion at District of Tofino yesterday. And full disclosure, I did work as on wolf biology projects in the past. And the way we solve this, and I don't know if this would be appropriate for the ACRD to consider, was that as it is a letter written to support a motion to go to AVICC, it was suggested that we all have the opportunity as individual councillors or directors at AVICC to address this issue in that format. So it was thought that there was no need to really respond to the correspondence in the format of a letter, and that the maybe a more appropriate way for individuals, in this case the ACRD, to respond would be at the AVICC when the resolution did come to the table, and there would be an opportunity to have that discussion there.
Thank you. Director Cote, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to say that AVICC is not going to look the same as it has. There won't be any opportunity for discussion. It's a one-day event, yes. So, but that said, we all do have the opportunity to vote as members. If you've paid your dues to get in there and to vote, that's where the opportunity is. I'm not sure where I sit on this at this time. I'd like some more information. And I don't know if, because this is centralized on Vancouver Island, it will stay with AVICC. We could bunt it over to UBCM, which we will do with a bunch of resolutions, but this one will come back to us. We don't have much time before AVICC because it's the end of May. So I'll just leave it at that. Just wanted to provide that information that you won't have that opportunity at AVICC. There will be chats though, I'm sure, chat rooms. We're going to be planning tomorrow or Friday on more on the convention. So I'll have more information after that. Thanks.
Thank you for that. I have Dr. Steer once more.
Thank you, Chairman. I believe Penny answered, or Director Cote answered the questions there. I did know that we probably wouldn't have the ability, but I thought there might be a chat potential. And then as individuals, we have the ability to vote on that resolution coming at the table, where would be in essence a way for us to express our view on it.
Mm-hmm. It does seem like this AVICC around for anything that we really care about when it comes to resolutions, we may be a benefit to take our own initiative and start connecting with folks online before the actual event to have those discussions, because we won't be able to have people get up and make their case, which I'm going to miss because sometimes I like listening to Al Sebring. And so the issues as they're being discussed, probably you won't get much in the way of good discussion going on a chat room because people will just start blasting with their own opinions. It's more than likely that you'll have to create something on Facebook or through email in order to move forward. And so that would be my suggestion, Director Shannon. I think the side of conservation and farming and agriculture and those concerns need to be put forward in a way that makes sense, but it's not going to be easy unless you get organized first. Yeah, I had Director McNabb and then Director Minions.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Director Shannon on this. The problem, this is coming from Oak Bay, and I mean, the sheer weight of the votes that they have can turn these things especially when you don't have an opportunity to discuss them. When we had the old growth logging motion that came from that direction, it was the discussion or the threat of discussion that closed that one down. And I mean, it's easy for them to say, sitting in a paved metropolis, that we shouldn't be hunting wolves or logging or fishing or a bunch of other stuff. But I mean, the reality is these wolves do need to be culled. I mean, all you got to do is listen to the news with regards to Stanley Park in Vancouver. They make a lot of puppies and it goes really quickly, and they can run the place over, especially in areas with cattle and sheep and other things like that. So there is a process out there to keep them at a proper level, and the process is working, and that's what rural Vancouver Island needs. So hopefully many other boards will be discussing this, and I personally would like to see a letter go to UBCM to suggest that they don't forward this thing, that it doesn't go to the ministry as a recommendation without thorough research.
All right, thank you, Dr. McNabb. I have Dr. Minions next.
Thank you. I was just going to say that I think, especially given that this year we won't have the opportunity for discussion, I think it very reasonably is the role of this board, if we feel informed enough, and we feel like taking a side and putting forward. I think it very much is the role of our board to write a letter of support or against putting this forward. So I think for myself personally, I am certainly not informed enough on this to take a position at this point. That said, we do have time, and if this is something Director Shannon, in her knowledge, feels passionately about, and Director Steer with his knowledge as well, I would suggest it's reasonable for us to bring this back for further discussion. Let's each take some time to get a bit more informed and have a more thorough conversation, because if we don't have the opportunity to debate at ABICC, then putting forward a letter from our board really is our opportunity. So I just want to support this coming back. If Director Shannon would like to bring it back at a future meeting, and if the board doesn't support writing a letter, then that's certainly our decision. I just think today we're not informed enough, but we have time to become informed, and that's really our role here. So I'm happy to support it coming back if Director Shannon wishes.
I'm wondering if it would be stronger to have a recommendation from a committee that's relevant. I can think of two. I can think of the EA Directors Committee, as well as the potentially one of the agricultural ones. I mean, the interface between agriculture, ranching, and predator control is something that may be important. I don't really know as much myself, so I would take suggestions from those who might know. Having a recommendation from a committee would probably mean that they've gone into even more detail, which would matter more to me. I'm in that kind of area. Director Roberts and then Director Shannon.
Yeah, thanks through the chair. I think that if we're talking about a committee or even through the EA directors, that one of the things perhaps that we should invite a conservation officer in to talk about these issues. I find this letter misleading. The shock and awe of, trap and kill an entire pack and so on and so forth for those areas around Sioux Kills. I mean, you're talking 9 packs down there, and I don't understand, the necessity for this. But I agree with Director Shannon, and I think that myself as being a hunter, and I'm not out to kill wolves, but nature has its own way of stabilizing populations. They grow and expand and then shrink back. And people that are affected by wolves, such as cattlemen and sheep farmers, and as Director McNabb mentioned, all the people living down in that area, Sioux Kills and those areas where you know, is close to community. Anything that goes on there, obviously something has disturbed this woman that has said this, but trapping and killing an entire pack is, you know, doesn't make any sense at this point. But I too would like to have more information before we proceed with it. But you know, again, I concur with Director Shannon on that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I have Director Shannon and then Cole. And then I think we'll go to Doug after.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for your insights. This is on the agenda because I believe the whole board received this letter a few weeks ago, and then I forwarded it to staff because I obviously felt very passionate about this. It comes down to I'm not in support of a blanket moratorium when we don't have enough information. Like everybody said, I mean, I've grown up hunting and fishing, and I'm pretty aware of the rules in the hunting and trapping synopsis. I realize that's not everybody's forte, but as Director Roberts said, some of the stuff in here is quite shock and awe, misleading. I really struggle with the part where they mention there's no regulations, because there are regulations. So I would love for this to come back, EA committee, and if there was municipalities even that wanted to be in on the conversation, just to get in this more, because it honestly frightens me when we talk about we look at a moratorium like this, where it could really affect like Central and Northern Ireland, where we see healthy wolf populations, and we are seeing declines in deer and elk populations. And this is a tool that the province uses to try and help this stuff. So if you're going to not regulate one of the predators on the island, I think and regulate everything else, it's just, you're asking for disaster. But I would love to get into this more down the road. So Shari, thank you for suggesting that very much. I will move that forward however you want to write that up. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. I have Dr. Cole, and then I have a couple of questions for Douglas.
I'm just going to weigh in saying this is so far out of my wheelhouse that I am one of those that I have no concept of it. So I would really appreciate the opportunity to have some time and maybe some assistance in learning more before I could make any sort of close to a educated, feel for it at all. So look forward to it coming back if that's what we're doing.
Yeah, I'm gonna do a lot of research on my own. Probably give a call to Ron Frank at Monos and maybe Darren. Anyway, Douglas, I had a question. Would you suggest putting this on the agenda of a committee? And would the EA committee be one where that could occur?
Well, Mr. Chair, it seems to me it seems a broader conversation than just the EA committee. So I'm wondering about the committee of the whole meeting that is 10 a.m. on May 26th, which is still, I think, ahead of AVICC. And at that particular meeting, I believe that agricultural representatives will be there, and which might be useful to inform this conversation as has been talked about.
Okay, Director Cote?
Thank you. Just checking the schedule, I can't see the date right offhand, but voting will be pre that. I think that voting will have to be concluded the week before. So just if we're going to talk about it, it needs to be at the next board meeting.
Could we call a committee of the whole meeting before the board then? Just, it seems like we'll be getting into a lot of deeper dive. And at that point, I wouldn't want to balloon out the board meeting to something that would go beyond 4 or 5 o'clock.
Mr. Chair, we also have one on the 12th that I think is concentrating on some of the finance choices that are in front of the board with respect to some of the grant funding.
I think that might fit more, as long as perhaps we have a discussion about how that'll work in regards to timing, because I'd want to give a full attention to either one of those. Is an hour discussion likely long enough, do you think, Director Shannon or McNabb? Yeah, go ahead.
I think that would be adequate if we I mean, I don't know if we want to do this where if we all go do our own research and come back and there's something in front of us. I mean, I've got links to the trapping regulations and hunting regulations. And I mean, I'm going off experience too, and just talking to other people that enjoy the outdoors. I completely agree that there's a whole conservation aspect to it. There could be different aspects of sea wolves versus the gray wolves. Maybe that's what studies and that's what needs to be looked at and brought to the province's attention. But I think if we had materials ahead of time to look at, I think an hour would be fine.
Okay. So I'm probably going to assume that there's going to be reaching out from staff to kind of say, well, what kind of materials might we want to look at and go from there. So you might have to shoulder some of that burden, Director Shannon, because I'm in the same boat as Director Cole. I have an idea of what it may look like, but I have no direct experience with any of this. So that being said, let's tentatively set it for that committee of the whole meeting. Douglas, if you want to follow up with me later, have Terry weigh in regards to how long she thinks it might take. I don't want to completely eradicate the plan as it was. And I do think having a deeper understanding of what it is moving forward will allow us to make some good arguments to also show that you need to you have to go into deeper detail in regards to just making moratoriums like this. This does very much feel like what Director McNabb was talking about, with a lot of the CRD region really kind of meddling as well. Dr. Roberts, and then Director Shannon, and then Director Bodner, then I think we're going to be done.
Yeah, through the chair, I see that we have an EA directors meeting on the 5th of May. I don't know if it would be, is that too short a period of time? Or did you want to carry it over onto the 12th?
That may be a good place to actually prepare, or at least have a discussion about what materials or items for consideration during the wider discussion might be. I think that's more up to the chair of the committee than it is up to the wider board, though, because I don't know what's on the agenda for that meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Shannon, and then Director Bodner.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I'm happy to work with staff if they have questions of where my concerns are with this letter, and just to say thank you to everybody for listening and with an open mind for me bringing this forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Director Bodner.
Just a quick question. I'm wondering if it would be helpful to have a conservation officer at the meeting.
That was suggested, so we'll try to line someone up for the committee of the whole meeting.
Okay.
Maybe not double up in the EA, because I think that's someone that the whole board would want to hear from.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. With that, are there any other items to be pulled out of the correspondence for information? All right, seeing none, could we have a motion to accept the correspondence? Thank you, everyone. Director Beckett and Director Cole, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay. It's been a long time since there's been that much substance coming out of correspondence for information, so thank you for that. That brings us to request for decisions and bylaws under item 8. So the first one is the open meetings and electronic meetings under the COVID-19 pandemic. Yeah, please go ahead, Wendy, and then we have Director McNabb right after.
Great. So just a brief update. So with the continued COVID pandemic, the provincial health orders respecting in-person board and committee meetings for local governments is still in effect. So in order for us to continue to comply with these orders and continue to hold meetings virtually, regional district board and committee meetings, and provide the public with various ways to participate in our meetings, we require the resolution that I've presented to be passed, and I'm recommending that we do it to May 27th, which is the day after our last board meeting in May. And staff will continue to check these orders for any changes in the meantime.
Okay, thank you for that. Director McNabb, please go ahead.
So I'd move the recommendation. Do you want it read out, or is that adequate?
I think that should be adequate. We're all quite aware of the motion as it stands. So the only relevant thing is the May 27th. We'll return to that then. So do we have a seconder? Director Roberts? Okay, thank you. Any comments? Director Cole, comment?
I'm just curious as to there is a difference in that this is about not having public in attendance, but we would actually be able to meet if we could properly space just without any audience. Is that correct?
So
As far as I understand, they are encouraging where you can to hold meetings virtually, but if there is a safe way to meet, have a few people meeting, I know that some local governments are just have council meeting as long as they can spread out.
Yeah,
but I'd have to
we
confirm.
didn't do anything wrong because we actually did it last night. We had most of us in a room and it was safe to do so. So
yeah,
this order is mostly about about having people in attendance.
Correct. Yes.
Mostly, yeah.
And it's a lot more challenging because our board is so big to find a location that works at this time. Yeah.
But I have seen council meetings where the desks are spaced out enough and they have those plexiglass surrounders, and that seems to work. Seems like it would be a bit muffled, but it seems like it works for Qualicum Council and that sort of thing too. Director Steer, please go ahead.
Yeah, and just we had the same conversation, and there's also the ability. We're exploring the ability to have those hybrid, ability to have hybrid in person and in the digital way.
Yeah, that's a discussion I'm probably going to have with Wendy and Douglas in regards to when we have 5 and 7 or something like that, people in attendance and non-attendance. That can get really confusing for people online trying to figure out who spoke in the big room unless you do it in a certain way. So we'll have to figure that out at some time. Any further comments? Okay, seeing none, it was moved and seconded. So all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. It does feel like we're getting so much closer to all being together again, though, and that would be really nice. That's coming from a huge introvert, so I miss you guys. All right, that comes into item B, which is the installation of traditional territory acknowledgement signage at the ACRD public facilities. Great. Since you're online, Heather, I assume you're going to speak to it, so please go ahead.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, so this is a request for the installation of traditional territory signage at our public facilities. So being the Alberni Valley, the ACRD Administration Office and the Long Beach Airport, as those are our two facilities that have public normally. So it's just a simple acknowledgement of the territory that we're occupying. I think it's a simple gesture in addition to acknowledging the territories when we start at the start of our public meetings. So I've included an example sign from the Ministry of Forests office that I saw recently. And I thought it was a nice gesture that we could incorporate into our facilities.
Great. Comments, questions? Director Roberts, go ahead.
Yeah, through the chair to Heather. We also thought about the Tofino Airport as well.
Yeah, the Tofino Airport is the other location.
Thank you.
Okay, any further comments? Seeing none, would anyone like to move the recommended motion? Thank you, Director Roberts, seconded by Director Cote. Okay, any further comments? I'm just really happy to see this happening, so thank you. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay, that brings us to the UBC or Union of British Columbia Local Government Development Approvals Program grant application. That is a mouthful. We've missed municipalities, I think. Go ahead, Mike.
Sure. So I'm going to speak to this, and first thank you to Trish, who did the heavy lifting and put the application together, or the report together. Just it's a recommendation that the board resolve to support this UBCM grant application. The grant is to cover a 2-year period. It is intended to cover. The application, how it's proposed, is intended to cover online development applications. So creating a web portal through our CityView system, so that people can submit applications with the required documentation online to improve the web-based GIS and mapping. So we currently have static PDF maps available on our website, but they're not interactive. And then to continue to support building inspection, which is seeing significant increases in addition to the code changes that have implemented, and to work on development approval efficiencies through the other applications, land use applications that we work on. And the deadline for this to make this application is May 7th, and the grant would be 100% funded. So you know, it's an opportunity to take advantage of this grant, which is out there for all regional districts and municipalities in BC, and to look at some ways to improve our efficiencies and you know, really improve some of our GIS and web mapping as well. And happy to answer any questions.
I'm going to start off with a question. Is this the kind of system where someone just on the web can click through and kind of like, oh, I wonder what this parcel looks like, and the information behind that?
Correct.
That sort of thing? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
I've played with that in other jurisdictions, so that's great to see. I saw Dr. Paulson. Did you have a comment?
I just thought I would comment that the city of Port Alberni also dealt with this grant application at the council meeting on Monday. We will be moving forward with the application as well, and I certainly agree with the shotgun method of regional district and city applying. I just want to make sure that if either or both of us get the grant, that we work collaboratively so that our planning approval systems, those sorts of things, have similar wording, and so it's not confusing. If somebody's coming into the Alberni Valley or the regional district, that they're kind of speaking all the same language. And I am so in favor of this grant application. If it reduces bureaucracy and streamlines our processes in the year 2021, where we're dealing in an electronic age, I think it's just such a great thing. Developers or entrepreneurs would be able to go on to your website and investigate properties, find legal descriptions of properties and those sorts of things, which will just speed up the process. And this is an area of bureaucracy that has lagged behind. So I'm hoping that the city of Port Alberni and the regional district may find a collaborative way to work with this through this grant, and maybe even a co-application of some sort.
Thank you. Director McNabb, go ahead.
I'd move that the Alberni-Claycourt Regional District Board of Directors support the application to the Union of BC Municipalities Local Government Development Approvals Program for a $250,000 grant to implement GIS and CityView online application portal, support building inspection, create web-based mapping, and streamline the development of application process and reduce bureaucracy. Good luck with that.
You do have a secondary. Thank you, Dr. Shannon. Okay, any further comments? Dr. Steer, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you through the chair. Yeah, the district of Tofino just approved this grant application yesterday as well. We are still moving physically pieces of paper around at that level. So this streamlining process, and I don't know if there'd be any value, and I'm sure Mr. Erg has had probably conversations with our managers, community sustainability about anywhere where there might be some symbiosis in this process.
And just really quickly, Mr. Chair, if you like, we certainly do regularly talk with both city development staff and both Tofino and Ucluelet as well. I regularly meet with Scott, and for the West Coast, we've set up a meeting schedule, quarterly, just to discuss what we're doing in each area with Ucluelet, Tofino, and regional district staff. So, and we will certainly coordinate, share where we can on this application.
Great, thank you. Okay, without any further comments, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay, brings us to item D, which is the ACRD and Shot First Nation Government to Government Accord. Douglas, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The protocol working group, which is the chair, vice chair, Director Cote, met with representatives from Shot First Nation. Very productive, very, I think, enthusiastic meeting. One of the outcomes was to finish off the work that we had started some time ago and has been picked up and put down over the years. And the recommendation is to approve the attached protocol with Sechot First Nation and the ACRD, but also to give the protocol working group the ability to give a little bit of course correction on it, providing the spirit that is embodied in the attachment is maintained. The idea being that, of course, it hasn't gone to Sechot Council yet, and the very document itself talks about being a living document, and so there's an opportunity to improve it over time with the experience that we'll develop together. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great, thank you. So I think what I'd like to do is just recognize the work that Directors Cote and McNabb did on ensuring that this kept moving forward, and really recognizing the benefit we've had with that guidance moving forward. In addition, I do think that the potential of a really progressive and productive relationship with Sechot and Huu-Padjisit is just on our doorstep. The way that, say, Huu-ay-aht has moved forward very quickly and moved forward with Bamfield together. In the future, Taschat's going to be moving even farther than that, even quicker, given where they're going with their governance, with how they're going to go about doing things in the Valley. And I think this is going to be to the benefit of everyone. So the earlier we can normalize out a good working relationship, the way that Bamfield and Huu-ay-aht does, I think that we're going to see a lot of good progress and a lot of things becoming possible through this. So once again, thank you all for the work that's been done. Are there any other comments and questions? Dr. Cote, please go ahead.
Thank you. It was a very positive meeting. I have been at many and talked with Sechot Council quite a few times over the years, and this is the most positive that futuristic looking that we've ever had. So thanks a lot to staff for making arrangements to get this underway. And I'd like to make the motion at this time.
Okay, Dr. McNabb, I think you're next up for speaking. Would you like to second? Yeah, okay. Did you have a comment as well?
Just one small comment. I'm wondering if we could use a different font that doesn't bunch up parties. It really takes the eye right out of it, that font.
Oh, like on the actual document. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Use Calibri. Come on. No, that makes sense. I think some of it was just cut and pasted into a different font. That's a good catch. Okay, any further comments? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. All right, thank you. All right, that brings us to item E, which is the AV landfill and Westcote landfill, the pilot project for coastal cleanup material tipping fee. Welcome, Jenny. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we're looking to do a 6-month pilot project to establish a specific rate for coastal cleanup materials. There's quite a bit of material on the coastline that needs to be dealt with. And since we've been trying to divert and recycle a lot of rope and netting and other materials, when these projects come in, they can come in quite mixed. And this material is of very low quality, but by definition, it is a mixed load with recyclable materials in it. So in the past 6 months, we've had one major cleanup project, and we've been working with specifically Coastal Restoration Society. They've received quite a bit of grant funding to work on this. And we were running into some challenges with that project to do with this mixed material load. So we've met with them to discuss some of the logistics that they have in doing these cleanup projects, and then what we need to do at the landfill in order to either receive that and best manage it to best utilize the available space in the landfill. We're hoping to set up this rate to see, first of all, if we can streamline the process, because we know we're going to have more cleanup projects coming down the line, which is good news because it does do a lot of benefit to the environment if they get out of there. So we've established a specific rate of $175 a ton that we'd like to use. And if they are able to keep the materials, all of the recyclable materials out of the load, it will come in at the $160 rate, which is still incentivizing them to separate loads as much as possible, which they will be doing regardless. And oh, one other point, they have expressed that they are looking for some available acreage in Port Alberni to help facilitate these projects for the short term and the long term, because basically it's staging for trying to get materials processed in the mainland. And that is a lot of the marine debris is plastic. So if they can basically have a stockpiling location and then it can get moved logistically to the lower mainland. It's a little pitch from them.
Okay, any further comments or questions? Dr. Steer, please go ahead.
Yes, I just want to first off thank Jenny and staff for once again coming to be very solution orientated to this issue that was brought up and brought forward to the ACRD. It is a very elegant solution and equitable, I believe, and fully support. And in terms of the sorting out of stuff, I told one of the applicants to this that he creates more jobs by getting them to sort it a little better. But anyways, that's another story. If so, yeah, I could make the motion that the ACRD Board of Directors approve a 6-month pilot project to receive up to 250 tons of coastal cleanup materials at the Alberni Valley and West Coast landfills at a rate of $175 a ton from Coastal Restorations.
Great, and seconded by Director Cole. Any further comments? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay, great. Thank you very much. And oh, you may be sticking around for Salmon Beach sewage collection fee bylaw. Please
Thank
take
you,
it away.
Mr. Chair. We've been working with the Salmon Beach Committee and the community. We're looking to upgrade the treatment system there to increase the availability, basically the capacity. And that project is in line to be completed in begin in fall and be completed by the end of the year. There's a few components with that, as we really do need to manage the volumes as they come in. And the committee has supported implementing a self-haul fee, which is $20 per 100 liters for those who self-haul, so that we can control and monitor the volume of material going into the community field. That's really important. And then also, because this summer we're going to be continued to be challenged with demands on the system, we are looking to implement an emergency pump and haul fee. Many of the properties are able to have 1 or 2 pumps, and they know well in advance. And then we have a group of users who sometimes aren't able to plan in advance and need to have a pump out quite quickly, and we often have a waiting list. So we need to put it in a measure so that they can get jumped to the top of the list without it being inequitable to others.
Any comments or questions or motions? Director McNabb, please go ahead. And then Director Roberts.
So when I was looking at this, I just had one question about the process itself. Is when they haul and dump into an active septic system, do they do anything for the bioprocess of that? Because the volume that you're putting in is far different than would typically be put into a normal septic system.
Yes, so a residential septic system would be a type 1. There's no treatment. It would go into a tank and then it would go distribute into the field. Type 2 system is one that has some form of biological reaction, right? So that can be a piece of some media in there, which will allow the bacteria to hold on to it, which will basically pull a lot of the solids out, right? So then they're not going into the field themselves. A type 3 system, which is what we're going to be moving forward with, does that, and it also adds in larger capacity to remove more of the solids, and then disinfection, so that basically to reduce the chance of impacts on the environment or human health due to pathogens. So the type 3 is sort of the upper end of basically maximizing the capacity of your septic field. And we've looked at it, and this will increase our capacity. I can't remember the numbers, but it definitely is going to deal with the next 5 to 10 years of demand that we project from the community.
Okay. Dr. Roberts, please go ahead.
Through the chair, thank you, Jenny, for all your hard work on this. The situation, simply put, now is that people are still having their recreational vehicles and they're wanting to dump their blue boys or whatever, and some of them have larger capacity holding tanks and they want to dump them. What we're trying to do here as well is to monitor and have our maintenance person out there monitor exactly what's going on. And in fact, there will be a charge associated with it, whereas in the past there has not been. So the majority of people with in-ground holding tanks are paying their rate, and they're happy to do that. But this clarifies things a lot better for everybody, and so we'll know exactly what's going into the system. And with that, I would like to make the recommendation.
Okay, thank you for the first reading.
That's correct, that the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors give first reading to the bylaw cited as Salmon Beach Sewage Collection Fee Amendment Bylaw number F1076-2, 2021.
Okay, thank you. And for those in the future, or Dr. Roberts, you can just say second reading, third reading, and adoption.
Fair enough.
Afterwards.
Thank you.
Yeah. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Beckett. Any further comments? Okay, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay.
Second reading.
Thank you, Director Roberts. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Beckett. Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried.
Third reading.
Thank you, Director Roberts. Thank you, Director Beckett. All those in favor? Motion carried.
And finally, that the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors adopt bylaw cited as Salmon Beach Sewage Collection Fee Amendment Bylaw number F1076-2, 2021.
Great. And seconded by, thank you, Director Beckett. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Great. Okay, that brings us to item G. I believe this will be Mike. Proposed amendments to the ACRD building bylaw. Actually, I'm not sure who it'll be. Oh, it is.
Yeah, it'll be me. So I certainly can run through the changes if you like as part of my introduction, or I could answer any questions. So take me a little bit to run through the 9 points, but I'm certainly happy to do that if that's something you'd like to do. Okay. So I'll do it that way. So the electoral area directors, we've had some discussions, over the last little while to do this, but at the electoral area directors committee meeting in January, staff were asked to prepare some amendments, and there's really I've highlighted 9 key changes, and then at the bottom of the staff report, just a summary of all of the changes that are going into the bylaw, and then we're actually presenting the new building bylaw as a consolidated bylaw, which is what we're recommending for first and second reading. So firstly, we're revising some of the key definitions for a dwelling unit, a farm building, value of worker, and actually changing the definition of an owner. And we used a very archaic definition, and our lawyers recommended that we update it and modernize it. Second would be to establish a $100 deposit fee when a building permit application is submitted. So we currently don't have any deposit fee, and we do have instances where people submit building permit applications and then never pick them up. So just establishes an intent, and that $100 deposit fee would come off the total cost of the building permit. And then at the same time, recommending that the minimum building permit fee be increased to $100 from the current $50. So those are mostly nominal, very small building permits, and just to match the deposit fee. The fourth point is establish an expiration time. So this would be 6 months for applicants to submit and complete the building permit application process. So we often get building permit applications, and then there may be certain things missing. For example, it might be their septic filing for their sewage, or engineering may be required. There's various items, and especially in the last year during COVID, it's very difficult to hand a building permit application back and tell people, bring it back when it's all complete. So we've been working through those processes. So just to give people a time frame from when they submit their application, they have 6 months to get everything they need, or at least demonstrate that they're working on that, so that we don't end up with backlogs of applications that we hang on to for a year and have never been even completed. And the next part would be the bylaw would establish an expiration time. So people would have 60 days to pick up and pay for their building permit once that building permit is ready to be issued. So we've gone through all the review process. Everything's complete. Everything meets code. The process is we phone the applicant, either the contractor or the owner, tell them that their building permit's ready to be picked up and paid for, and then they basically have 2 months or 60 days to come in and pay for that. So that would apply to any building permit sort of applied for after, but also we have existing building permits that are sitting in our office that have been there for a while, and this new bylaw would establish that 60-day period for retro. Well, it wouldn't be retroactively, it would be from the date of adoption. So any building permits we have on file right now that have not been picked up and paid for, the owners would have 60 days from the date this bylaw is adopted. And then sixth, it would establish an exemption for farm buildings that are under 500 square meters in floor area, and there's some rationale for this size, which is quite large, and how it coincides with Part 9, which is the non-engineered buildings, and it is intended to be low occupancy buildings, so not dwellings, and they would need to meet the definition of a farm building. So the way this is drafted, it's not a dwelling. It has to be on property that is taxed as farm buildings and also meets a regulation standard. And there are 7 exemptions for agricultural uses that basically would be outside of this. And then, just for example, cannabis production is one of those things that any size building would require a building permit. And that was something we talked about at the EA directors, and just some of the other exemptions from that section, from the farm regulation, include certain manufacturing components of farm products as well. So those types of things would require building permits. And as staff, we will work on a case-by-case basis with property owners to let them know if they're exempt or not. And I expect that will be part of the process. And then the 7th one is increase the building permit fees where construction is started without a building permit. So we do have
Sorry about that.
No problem. Okay, yeah. There we go. So basically, if somebody starts building without a building permit, their building permit fee is going to be double. And this is really to cover the additional costs that staff have to go through as far as going in and examining. I mean, we sometimes find buildings that are complete. So just an incentive for people to apply for a building permit and get it. And then anyway, that was also something that was recommended by the committee. And then updating the fee schedule. So this, right now, what we use, it's called Marshall Swift. It's a valuation program, a residential or building valuation program, and the bylaw currently says standard construction, and we're certainly seeing a lot more value, or the buildings are much more complicated. So basically, the building permit would be calculated on a more accurate representation or true value of the building permit. And then just some additional amendments to modernize and update the bylaw that was recommended by our lawyer. What we're recommending today is that the board give first and second reading to the bylaw, and this will give us and direct staff will give us the opportunity to notify the public, do some advertising in the newspaper, our building inspectors who have interaction with our regular contractors, let them know of the changes coming, and then we will bring that back to the board on May 26th for the board to consider third reading and adoption. And I will stop my presentation there and answer any questions that anybody may have. And just the other thing I just wanted to point out, because it came up in the grant application discussion, is I have shared this with with staff at Defino Ucluelet in the city of Port Alberni and had some initial discussions with them and just commented on some of those discussions in the report. And as we always talk about as staff, anything that they want to use out of the bylaws we're doing, it's quite all right to cut and paste, plagiarize, use whatever we've got in any of their bylaws if it works for things they're wanting to do. So I'll stop there and answer any questions.
So I do have Dr. McNabb, but I have a quick question. Is it standard to use the metric system for building dimensions, or is that just something we started doing?
It is because it matches some of the code issue in this case, and in some instances there's some conversion, and we'll put things in brackets, but certainly trying to move towards more of a metric system.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Dr. McNabb.
Yep.
So I've moved that the Alberni-Claycott Regional District Board of Directors give first reading to the bylaw cited as building bylaw PS 1011 2021.
Thank you. And seconded by Director Roberts. Any further questions? You can just say second reading after this. Dr. Shannon, please go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry, I have a question for Mike before we continue on. I just, Director Jack already pointed out the meters versus feet. Usually when we talk about a house that's square footage, that kind of threw me a little bit. Maybe we want to add that in brackets. And then you said there was a few reasons that how that number came up with. If you could just, I'm sure we talked about this at the EA directors, but if you could just expand on that a little.
Sure. So, within, I'm not a building inspector, but within the building code, there is basically buildings over 500 square meters require engineering, and it's a different section of the code. So by keeping them, and they're more complex, they're harder to build buildings. So those types of large structures would still require a building permit, and just to ensure that things are built properly. They often or always require engineering, structural engineering components as part of that. So that was the rationale there. No, but good question, because I don't think we talked about that at the EA directors meeting. So it was just something that in our discussions as staff on how do we implement this? What's the best way to do it? So that's where we came up with that number.
Okay, thank you.
Any further comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried.
I would move second reading.
Thank you, Dr. McNabb. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Bodner. Comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried.
And I would move that the Alberni-Claycott Regional District Board of Directors direct staff to inform the public and advertise the proposed changes to the building bylaw.
Do you have a seconder, please? Thank you, Director Bodner. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried.
And Chair Jack, do you want me to read the final one of that? Yeah,
I think it's
up.
setting it to the agenda on the 20th.
Okay, all right. Actually, Mike had said that he just wanted the first two done. So I would move that the Alberni-Claycott Board of Directors consider third reading and adoption of the building bylaw PS 1011 2021 at the May 26th, 2021 regular board meeting.
And seconded by, thank you, Director Cote. Comments? Dr. Roberts?
Yeah, I didn't, through the chair to Mr. Erg, with regards to Director Shannon's comment about square footage, is there anything that can be added to that? For example, if you're going to go metric, do a slash with square footage would be for us older folks that are looking at doing things that it might help. I don't know if it's possible to do that or not, but your comment on that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Sort of outside of the official bylaw itself, we provide all of the information in metric and imperial, and for me too. I use Google Converter all the time on these things. So So we will certainly do that, and as part of the advertising of that, we will have that information. It's just it becomes a little bit complicated in bylaws in that it's just easier to do it in one measurement. If we're and really moving to metric, just because sometimes there's that, that's 1 square foot or a 0.5. It becomes an issue sometimes in how we administer things. So we just want to be clear on sort of how we're measuring it. But certainly for all of our information, it'll be in both.
Yeah, it's funny, but just for the record, 500 square meters is 5,381.96 square feet.
Yeah, thanks.
Director Roberts has dots on his speedometer.
Dr. Cote, I think you're up next.
Thank you. Question about informing the public and advertising. Is there any option for public comment in this?
It wasn't going to be a public information. No, that wasn't the proposal. It was more about informing we were going to let people know. We want to give builders, contractors a little bit of lead time. I think there's, especially on some components of the changes, I feel like there's some urgency to get this adopted and implemented, and then we again, we want to give that month time so people know the building permit fees are going up and things like that. So it's not something that's required or recommended that we hold a public meeting or information. And I mean, the members of the public are always welcome to write to the board, and we would provide anything we get back to the board at the 26th meeting.
Now, before I go back to Director McNabb, did I miss anyone? I feel as though I might have. No? Okay, Director McNabb.
So I recently read through the Nanaimo RDN building permit process, and this is actually quite a bit less onerous than theirs is. But I mean, some of the situations that have occurred because we don't have tighter controls on the building bylaws themselves have been basically, in a business sense, very uncontrolled, and as these things sit on the shelf, any building permit sits on the shelf, the rules change, and so you end up with a building permit that was issued 8 months ago, 10 months ago, that doesn't actually match code today. Like if you redid it, it probably wouldn't be approved. So things need to happen in a more precise way, and also we've had many situations where people have not got a building permit up front, and they just figure they'll build it. And if we come along later and see that it's built, they'll just get a building permit. Well, our effort is a lot more than that. When we go through a complaint process, find out that somebody hasn't done it, a lot of times the reason they didn't do it is because it requires a variance to do it. And, this puts all of that up front, and, it's user pay, and we can recover some of our costs by that part of this update. Thanks.
Thank you for that. That's appreciated. Director Cote, please go ahead.
Thank you. As I recall, a building permit is good for 2 years. Does this affect that at all, or?
No, that would still be in there. So once the building permit's issued, they have 2 years to complete the construction, and then if they would need to reapply for a building permit, and that building permit would be valued based on the value of the construction that still needs to be completed. So if it's $100,000 garage and they have completed $80,000 of it, and there's still $20,000, after 2 years, they'd be paying a building permit fee based on $20,000, for example. But then that's included in the building bylaw right now.
Thank you.
Okay. With that, all those in favor of all opposed? Okay, motion carried. All right, thanks a lot, Mike. That was great. Okay, well, back to planning matters. So I guess you stick around. This is 9.1A, an ALC exclusion referral. So Please go ahead, Mike.
I'll go ahead. I'm just scrolling through my
Yeah.
on my computer here. I want to make sure I have this report in front of me before I start. So yeah, so I'll just quickly run through this. And so the Agricultural Land Commission, and I'm going to, I guess I want to step back. This is an application that the City of Port Alberni has made to exclude the McLean Mill property from the Agricultural Land Reserve. And this is a new process, sort of overall how ALR exclusion applications are made. And then there's some specific language in the new legislation that deals with a local government that makes the application. In the City of Port Alberni, it's clearly a local government. And in this situation, they're a local government who owns land in the ACRD, and we are, a neighboring local government. So the ALC has determined that the ACRD must receive this application, and I'll speak to that a little bit more as I go through this. And I guess it's the receiving the application. It means something different than the other types of ALR or ALC applications that the board reviews. So, in other types of applications that the board reviews, if the board passes a resolution to deny an application or just doesn't deal with an application, that ALC application doesn't actually go to the Land Commission. It just stops. It ends there. That is not the case in this specific situation. So that's why I was just saying the board only has to receive this application. No matter what motion the board makes, this application is forwarded to the Land Commission. Just by the nature of the city of Port Alberni being a local government, they have the right to make that application. So this application is made as on a recommendation that came from the actual Agricultural Land Commission when the Land Commission considered the non-farm use, which would have actually allowed the McLean Mill, previous application would have allowed the McLean Mill to operate under the conditions that they've been doing with some additional things that have been added recently. So that application was denied, but in part of the report and part of the recommendation was that the Land Commission said that they would consider an exclusion application for this property. Under legislative role of the ACRD, I have summarized in my report the legislative requirements as they've been provided and interpreted by the Agricultural Land Commission. So that's what that section relates to. And just to provide a little bit of history on this one, and because the ACRD has had a role through the development or creation of McLean Mill, going back to I won't go into the various resolutions, but the resolution that created the McLean Mill subdivision was in 1993, and that was supported by the board and permitted by the Agricultural Land Commission at that time. The McLean Mill property was rezoned to park and public use, which I would note does not allow agriculture as a use, or farming, and that was done in 1999. The most recent Beaufort official community plan designates this property as a cultural heritage site. And again, the OCP was supported by the Agricultural Land Commission in 2012, as well as previous versions of the OCP. So that was something that was done. So staff have recommended that the board notify the ALC that the ACRD supports the application to exclude, noting that the current zoning and OCP designations support the current use. And I am happy to answer any questions anybody might have.
Okay, any comments or questions? Dr. Shannon, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for the report. I have read through this, received correspondence. What I would like to see happen with this today is that we go with option number 3 considered in the staff report, which is that we table the staff report today and refer the application to the ACRD Agriculture Advisory Committee for their review, and then it come back to us. I would like to see this happen just to kind of close the loop in a sense of communication, because when this first came to us for the exemption, it got sent to the AAC, and I attended that meeting, and part of their discussion was they thought that it should be an exclusion application. So I think just to kind of bring it back to them and say, hey, this is where we're at now. It's still the same property. Now we're looking at this. And I would just love to give them the opportunity to just speak to it once more as it's been revised and what's going on now, because that's what we have that committee for. And I think that it would be great just to have that extra communication. And I know we don't have to do it, but I think it's just a great idea to do it. So I would be moving that we go with that option today. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have a seconder for that option? Thank you, Director Bodnar. Would anyone like to speak to that? When is the next AAC meeting?
So I can speak to that, Mr. Chair. We would just schedule a meeting. So with that committee, they review applications that are sent to them or are part of the normal review process, and we would just schedule the meeting as needed. So if that's the direction of the board, we certainly would be sending that application. We'd set that up as soon as possible.
Okay, it's just getting towards my question, I think probably for Director Paulson or Minions about timing and whether or not there's any timing considerations involved there. Dr. Minions, please go ahead.
Thank you. Appreciate that suggestion. My feeling is that if this has already been to the AAC and they recommended that we pursue exclusion, it seems a bit redundant to send it back to the AAC. I also do want to comment that the City of Port Alberni did hold a public hearing on this, open to members of anywhere, but we did have actually, I think all of the people who spoke were regional district residents. Included in the speakers was Anna Lewis, who of course is very involved the AAC and with the ACRD. And just reading from the minutes here, she submitted, grew up on a dairy farm and frequented McLean Mill, that she supports the exclusion application, works for the ACRD as an agricultural support worker, and is aware that there is a large amount of agricultural land in the Alberni Valley that is not being utilized for farm use, doesn't feel that McLean Mill has agricultural land value in its current state. So while I appreciate, that maybe it makes some sense to send it back to the same committee again, I do want to recognize that we've gone through a public process on this. And additionally, we have been pursuing this for some time with a lot of opportunity for public input. It's gone to the committee already, and we are very much trying to just get some finality one way or the other on this issue. This is an operation that costs the city a significant amount of money. If we can't exclude it from the ALC, we will certainly accept that. But every, additional step that comes in delays our ability to book weddings, book events, host anything there really. And the financial uncertainty is incredibly challenging. So I feel that it's already gone through this committee and it would be a redundant step to send it back. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Director McNabb.
So I'm really dating myself here, but 1993, I was on the city council that actually moved this ahead. So I'll duck. But nevertheless, when we did it, we assumed with the direction of the Agricultural Land Commission and the Heritage Canada and all of the rest of it, that we were doing the right thing, like that we're moving forward on a path that was consistent with the regulation at the time. So, it is a huge investment by the community, both in time spent and in money over the period of from 1993 till now. Many people have worked through that facility, created it to be what it is today on a volunteer basis. And, I think the application for, to finalize it and legitimize it is valid. I mean, that's what we thought we did in the first place back in 1993. It was sort of in the community, it was recognized that way. I'm not quite sure what changed along the way, but something did. And so, I think that the due diligence has been done here, and the public has had lots of time to get their opinions across. And I've read the opinions, and it doesn't change the fact that it is a heritage site. It is important to the heritage and integrity of the Alberni Valley. Many of our grandfathers and fathers and uncles have actually worked at that site, either as a heritage site or as an operating logging site. So I'd like to see this move forward, quite frankly. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Director McNabb. Are there any further comments? Director Cote, please go ahead.
Thank you. I also sit on the Alberni Valley Heritage Commission and Museum Commission, and they are supportive of this application. They are supportive of McLean Mill and the action that's happening there. So it is a heritage site, has been for a very long time, and I think we should move forward on this. Thanks.
Okay, so with that, I think what I'm going to say is the motion for doing number 3 is not supporting it the way that I think I'm hearing here. So would it be fair to say that Director McNabb or Director Cote, would you be voting against this motion? Just to be clear.
Yes, I would.
Yeah.
Me too.
Okay, so with that, are there any other further comments? Okay. Oh, Director Minion, sorry.
Thank you. Just a point of clarification, if myself and Director Paulson are allowed to vote on this, given that we are the applicant, or the city is the applicant.
So the city is the applicant, but I don't know if it's a conflict of interest. I think this is something that Douglas will need to, because I don't think
it is not a conflict of interest. The regulations to the Local Government Act anticipate a participant of the region having endeavors in this manner, and accordingly don't consider this a conflict.
because it's within kind of the business or the business of governments rather than, say, for example, TFL 44. I excuse myself because I'm a director of a
Well, in that particular case, it isn't actually Huu-ay-aht First Nation as a local government, but rather the.
But me as a director, yeah.
Yeah, it's a different corporation, and so the idea is that if we start taking board directors off when it's the municipal member of the federation away, you start dismantling the board in its decision-making capacity. Is the way I understand it.
Okay.
So,
thank you. Appreciate the clarification.
Okay, so with that in mind, any further comments? Director Beckett, please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm just a little bit concerned, Chair Jack, that Director Shannon could still make a motion if she felt strongly about it.
Yeah.
And that we would have a vote if necessary, if there was a seconder.
Yes, there already has been a seconder. It's already on the floor. I just wasn't sure what the intention of, like, I'm supportive of this motion. I'm not, and we weren't really speaking to the motion, but rather the project, which is similar but not the same. Yeah. Okay. So with that, because it was seconded by Director Bodner, I believe. Okay. So with that, seeing no further comments, all those in favor of the motion. Oh, Director Shannon.
Thank you. I just wanted to make the comment because are we now voting on the original?
Your original, yes.
My original of going option 3 or the original in the agenda? Okay,
no, because that wasn't moved. So it's only yours. Only yours is the only one on the floor.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to speak once more to it because just because I really feel like more communication here is better than less because it's a public property and because it's a contentious property. And I have heard through some volunteers of the committee that there's frustration when something's happening or a project's happening and there's no feedback. And because this application has changed and it's not going back to them, that's why I feel like it's fair for it to go back to that committee just to have a final say before we go to the ALC, rather than presuming from the previous committee meeting of what their actions were then, because this application has changed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Dr. Paulson, can we make sure everyone is online? Yeah.
Being not a political person, but in order to satisfy that, I would suggest that I'm going to vote against the motion, Director Shannon, but I understand your position. And I think that if we maybe sent a notification to the AAC with regards to what we've done here today for information only, just like we receive correspondence, maybe that might be a way to go here as well. But anyway, I just throw my 2 bits worth there.
Okay. All right, thank you. I think the only one I don't see is Wilf, so if you could unmute and let me know how you intend to vote.
I'm here.
Oh, you are there? Okay, so all those in favor, please. Okay.
Sorry, I had a question.
Oh, you had a comment? Sorry.
I did. Just that the heritage designation is quite restrictive to that property, to most of that, like to where the mill is. So, and that would be the part that's being taken out of the ALR. So that would be my reason. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, we'll do that again. All those in favor? And all opposed? Okay.
All right.
Okay, and okay, so that's motion defeated. Okay, so now we're back to square one. Next steps would be Dr. Paulson.
Just in the interest of moving forward, just a quick comment. This would enable us moving forward and in a timely manner for our management team there to actually move forward with business planning, which should have started in December or January of this year. So I'd like to read the motion if I could, Director Jack or Chairman Jack.
Please go ahead. At the top of page 5, is that the one you're reading from?
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
I'd like to move that the Board of Directors notify the Agricultural Land Commission that the ACRD supports the City of Port Alberni's ALC exclusion application for part of Lot A, Loop Farms in District Lot 106, Alberni District, Plan VIP 57991, except that part in Plan VIP 65071, noting that the current zoning is park and public use, P2, district, and the official community plan designation is Cultural Heritage Site, McLean Mill National Historic Site.
Okay, so moved. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director McNabb. Any further comments? Dr. Shannon.
Thank you. I would then like to see what Director Paulson suggested and see we do some correspondence to the AAC to keep them informed of what has happened with this application then, please.
If we want to add that to the motion, I'm fully in support of that. Or if it needs to be a separate motion, I'm not sure.
I think it has the same effect if we do a separate motion, and it'll just be cleaner rather than trying to come up with some way to amend it. We could do 2 motions instead of 3. Okay, so with that, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. All right, so what should the wording be on your recommendation, Director Paulson, or anyone?
Maybe I could work with Director Shannon on the wording here and or wordsmithing by staff, but I would just like to make a motion that we apprise the AAC of the decision and the process as we presented it today. Does that make sense?
Yep. Okay, like the background and the considerations that we've taken into account.
Yeah, rationale.
Okay. Do we have a seconder for that? Director McNabb, thank you. Any comments? Oh, comments as well?
The Beaufort AAC, like the AAC, oh, not the Advisory Planning Committee. I'm sorry, I'm off stream. Sorry.
Okay, yeah. It's the Agricultural Advisory. So we got to be, yeah. When I hear AAC, I think annual allowable cut. So let's make sure that we write that out proper.
And I certainly won't be offended if there's some wordsmithing on that motion.
I think Wendy will probably put something that makes sense. Director Cote,
She's the best girl I know today.
I believe that the application has to have all of the correspondence included already. As I read, maybe staff could confirm that.
So anything that the board, Mr. Chair, anything that the board's received to date, we would forward to the Land Commission. There's a couple of letters attached to this. Certainly, anything that came from the Agricultural Advisory Committee, if we had a meeting before they made a decision, we could certainly forward that to the Land Commission separately, as well as any members of the public can submit comments directly to the Land Commission.
Okay, Director Shannon.
Thank you. Then going back to when there was the AAC meeting in the fall for the exemption versus the exclusion, did those minutes go to the ALC with that one, where this discussion happened?
Yes, they would have. The recommendation would have gone. Yeah, we usually package everything up and forward it to the Land Commission.
Okay, so then because as part of that meeting, there was talk of exclusion versus an exemption, would those then go again with this application because the application's changed?
Not necessarily. No, we would be forwarding this package that the board received. We wouldn't be including anything that was related to the other application. The ALC has all of that information as well. So
they have it already.
Yeah.
Okay.
But would they include that in this new application? That's kind of why I wanted to go back to the AAC, because if there's discussion from the AAC for an exclusion, I'd want us and the ALC to see that, because if they're not going to get that discussion from the previous meeting with this new application, I think that's important that it sees it from our Ag Advisory Committee. But I will stop hammering that. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, I think all in favor of all opposed? Okay, motion carried. So we'll make sure that information gets carried forward then, if it isn't already. All right, that brings us to item 10.1, which are staff reports. I think just the one that's coming up is take a look at the meeting schedule and make sure that it still makes sense. But it's Heather, if you wanted to give us the EOC report, that'd be great.
Great, thank you. So these numbers are from yesterday because the COVID numbers for today were just coming out. So yesterday there were 799 new COVID cases across the province for a total of 8,089 active cases. Provincially, there were 500 people hospitalized, with 164 of those people being in the ICU. In the Island Health region, there are 263 active cases, with 74 of those active cases in the Central Island area. So cases are on a downward trend in the Island Health region. As far as immunizations, 1.6 million vaccines have been administered in British Columbia. Anyone 18 and older can now register for vaccine. Those 59 and older are booking appointments. AstraZeneca is now available to anyone 30 and older. That was a recent change this week. However, there's a limited supply of AstraZeneca. Some of this vaccine has been directed towards the hotspots in the province. And as the supply is replenished, anybody 30 and over can book an appointment through their participating pharmacy. But it's not expected that AstraZeneca will be available in the regional district. As of last Wednesday, Port Alberni had a vaccination rate of 35%, which was slightly higher than the average of 31.7 for the rest of Island Health. Since that was from last week, I suspect the number is higher now. The province announced today that 37.57% of eligible British Columbians have received their first dose. Bamfield received their whole community approach vaccinations, and they have added an additional day to capture those who missed their first dose. Ucluelet and Tofino are finishing their whole community approach vaccination clinics this week. Long-term care homes are starting to receive their second doses, and public health estimates this will be completed by the week of May 10th. New legislation was announced today to allow for paid leave for workers to take time off work to get their COVID vaccine. This allows for part-time and full-time employees to take up to 3 hours of paid leave for each vaccination. And this legislation is retroactive to April 19th. And I'm sure most of you know that last Friday, the province introduced a travel restriction order to curb the spread of COVID-19. So non-essential travel is prohibited between 3 regional zones in the province. First zone is the Lower Mainland and Fraser Valley together as one area. Vancouver Island is a separate area, and the third region being the Northern and Interior regions. This order is in effect until May 25th. And although the order puts legal limits on travel between these 3 regions, the guidance remains unchanged that everyone should continue to stay within their local community and travel for essential reasons only. And as a reminder, once you get your vaccine, you still are required to follow all provincial health orders and continue to minimize interactions with others, as it takes a period of time to build immunity. And not COVID related, I just want to mention that next week is Emergency Preparedness Week. And so we'll be promoting the Emergency Preparedness Program on Shaw Cable, on the Alberni Valley Emergency Facebook page. And we are running a contest on 93.3 The Peak Radio. And the City of Port Alberni declared next week Emergency Preparedness Week. So thank you, Directors Paulson and Minions, for that. And that's about it. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions? Okay, that sounds great. Thank you, Heather. All right, are there any other things people would like to pull out, or would we like to just receive the reports? Dr. Roberts? Receive the reports? Okay, do we have a seconder? Dr. Mab, thank you. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay. That brings us to committee reports. First up is 911 Corporation. Dr. McNabb, please go ahead.
No report on 911 next month.
Okay. VIRRL Library, Dr. Cote.
Meeting is this weekend.
Great. Alberni Valley Chamber of Commerce, Director Minions.
Thank you. The main topic being talked about right now is McLean Mill, as they are the operator contracted from the city. And so just, trying to figure out plans kind of one way or another. And then the chamber did just receive, well, actually the city received a grant from ICE-T that the chamber is facilitating for us, and that is to hire 2 business support workers. So those are 2 people who have already begun reaching out to local businesses impacted by COVID, and their role is to help them make sure that businesses have applied for all of the grants that they're eligible for. We have heard from many local businesses in the Alberni Valley that they haven't applied for specifically the BC Small Business Recovery Grant for businesses that are eligible, up to, I think, $40,000 for tourism businesses. So there's a lot of businesses that haven't applied because they didn't realize it was available, or didn't realize they were eligible, or were intimidated by the process. So the workers that we had funded through ICE-T will go around to businesses and support them in making sure that they, receive everything that they're eligible for, and provide them any other connections that they need. So the city, we are really grateful that the chamber is taking the management of that position, those 2 positions on for us. And the chamber is working really hard to get those people out there. So if you know of a business that you think might need that kind of support. They are calling all businesses, but that will take some time. So if there's anyone specific that you know is being impacted that could use some support, please feel free to reach out to the chamber directly, and they will put you in touch with one of the 2 employees. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Next up is Air Quality Council for the Valley, Dr. Bodnar.
Thank you. At our last meeting, Tarek Ayachi came. He's from the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change, and did a report on the ozone and PM 2.5 in the Alberni Valley. But there has been a slight change. We are not in the red zone. We are in the orange zone now, but we're still the 3rd highest polluted area in BC. The major cause has been the wildfires, the wood smoke, and the outside burning. We're still putting out for more purple monitors to measure the PM 2.5 in the valley. And Alex Dyer from the planning department has put out online a survey for public input on burning and wood stove burning and the regulations for rural areas. We really like to encourage everybody to fill that out who needs to apply by going to the ACRD to Let's Connect. And that survey will be on there until May the 12th. And it's something that I think that's really important that people may not think to do is to check the ventilation index in BC, and it tells you what it will be for Port Alberni. So those people that are planning a big burn out in the rural districts, if they could check that first, that would give you some idea if you've got some room to move as to where to burn. So that's it. Okay. Oh, no, I have one more thing. The wood stove smoke online education course is done on the mainland, and Anna's looking into it to see if that's something we could put under air quality on the ACRD website. So that would be a good thing, so it'd be more publicity out there for the public. So that's it.
Thank you, Director Bodnar. Director Shannon, did you have a comment or question?
I did just have a quick comment, thank you. On the survey that's going up from the regional district, I just got my flyer in the mail today, and it looks great and it's eye-catching. Just a comment that it would be nice if there was a little bit of information on what the bylaw actually is and what some proposed changes people might look at. It just says where the survey is and what the bylaw is called, but I just felt like maybe next time it would be great if there was more information on the bylaw itself actually on the pamphlet going out to people. Otherwise they have to go find it on our website. Thanks.
Thank you.
Great. That brings us to the West Coast Aquatic Board. Dr. Steer.
Sorry, I had a question.
Oh, sorry, Director Cote, please go ahead. We'll go
Is there any opportunity to have any of these laminated so that we can put them out in the community? So I'd like to.
I'm not sure.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Steer, if you would go ahead.
No report.
Oh, well, there we go. AVICC, Director Cote.
Oh, thank you. While we were meeting here, there was an email that came out reminding everybody about the conventions, AVICC convention early bird registration. Deadline is April 30th. So hopefully we've all signed up. And I did find also that the resolution and executive voting will be between May 24th and the 26th. That's all for that. But I just like to also recognize that today is the National Day of Mourning. Thanks.
It's a good reminder. Thank you, Director Cote. That brings us to the Beaver Creek Water Advisory Committee. Director McNabb.
So no meeting, but we did have 2 major breaks of AC piping in our system over the last 30 days, and it's quite problematic. We've got a meeting next month. Thank you.
Thanks. and then West Island Woodlands Advisory Group. So myself.
So we did have a meeting on April the 8th, and the operational update was given by Mr. Mraz, and also the 2020 indicator results were given by Aaron Badesso. Every time they do these things, it just is amazing, the regulatory supervision that goes into, and the time that the company has to spend, the money they have to spend to create these documents. I'm not quite sure who's actually perusing them and making sure that they're actually right, but it's a phenomenal process. Shortly after the meeting, the next day, it was announced that Huu-ay-aht had achieved the second level of investment in Western Forest Products, and I think that that's absolutely awesome. It really is a excellent long-term investment, and really for the city of Port Alberni or the Alberni Valley, it's a really significant step forward on an economy basis. The other thing that happened was Aaron Badesso, who has been leading Western Forest Products in all of this methodology, has announced his retirement. I'm not quite sure who they would get to replace Aaron. I'm thinking maybe two people, because he's totally committed to making sure that they're going down the road of harvesting and replanting in the correct and environmental way. I certainly wish him well. His retirement date's the end of June, and great guy, local guy, and really does a ton of work on advising the community where we're at. That's it.
Yeah, I had the privilege of attending this time around too, and one thing I want to really underline is the depth by which Western Forest Products does go into their indicator studies and showing how much farther than the provincial regulations actually sit. And so these are things like protecting trees that have eagle nests, ensuring that there's enough space around bear dens, and so on and so forth. There's more than that. I just didn't write them all down in one place. So I think the operations that are being undertaken on TFL 44, which is where Western is active here, really go above and beyond what's required by the province, and is something that really does stand out. And I think that's part of the reason that Huu-ay-aht as a government, as well as Huu-ay-aht as our People's Assembly, voted to further involve ourselves in the direct investment in this particular tree farm license and forestry activity in the region as a whole. So we're happy to become more and more a part of an integrated economy here. And we know that as we do well, everyone else does as too. So we'll see how things go in the future, and you may see us investing more and more in the area. So with that, that brings us to the Agricultural Development Committee and Director Shannon. So please go ahead.
Thank you. I'll start with, as we're all aware on the board, because we got the email that the ACRD was successful in getting the $300,000 grant from the Vancouver Foundation for the Expanding the Influence of Regional Agriculture Support project that we're doing. We've had a couple ADC meetings this year, and one of them, this is what I was ready to talk about last board meeting, but we didn't get to it. We had a couple presentations at our ADC meeting, and one of them was from Ty James, who has a program or this going to do modular infrastructure on farms, so like 20 or 40-foot sea cans, to help with farmers who are leasing land, that once their business becomes viable enough that maybe they can purchase their own land, the investment they've put in their capital to process their goods or store their goods can go with them, and they're not actually investing in the capital of the property owner. We also had a presentation from Mark Smith about a Taste Local initiative, which was basically to help with get producers an efficient distribution channel to get their produce to consumers, whether that be grocery stores or restaurants, similar to what the Tofino Ukiah Culinary Guild is doing. So Erica Gold did talk to that they're working on that on the West Coast, and there was talk of trying to expand that more with the Valley instead of just the West Coast with the producers here. We have a meeting tomorrow morning regarding provincial meat regulations. Insurance costs have come up that we talked about at the last board meeting, which we are going to bring forward to our committee of the whole. And the other thing that's going on right now is the ACRD is working with the Farmers Institute and Alberni Valley Transition Town and the Food Hub with the Garden Starter Pack program again, with container and in-ground and potato packs on a sliding scale price-wise. So it's available to all members in the community, and they're asking if anybody share that information or participate. Orders for any of the packs are due by this Friday. And that's about all I got for you this week.
That's great, though. Thank you. Are there any other reports that anyone would like to give? Okay, seeing none, could we get a motion to receive the committee reports, please? Thank you, Director Cote and Director Paulson. Okay, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Okay, we don't have any unfinished business. We don't have any late business. Are there any questions coming from the responses at acrd.bc.ca?
Mr. Chair, we do not have any questions or comments from the public respecting the meeting today.
Okay, so now the next step is going to be moving in camera. And just for our benefit, this is when we cut the live stream. And so I'll read out the motion so that for the record and online, people know why we're going in camera. So this is a motion to close the meeting to the public as per the community charter under sections 91A, personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the regional district or another position appointed by the regional district. 2, 91J, information that is prohibited or information that if it were presented in a document would be prohibited from disclosure under section 21 of FOIPA. And 21(1)(ci) of FOIPA, the head of a public body must refuse to disclose to an applicant information the disclosure of which could reasonably be expected to harm significantly the competitive position or interfere significantly with the negotiating position of a third party. And then lastly, 92B, which is the consideration of information received and held in confidence relating to negotiations between the regional district and the provincial government or the federal government or both, or between the provincial government, a provincial government or the federal government or both, and a third party. And so that is the motion, and I'll move it. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Paulson. All those in favor?